Here's Lindsey Graham, what he said. He said, I will soon introduce legislation that will impose sanctions on any country that cooperates with the orders of the court in The Hague. I don't care if it's Canada, France, Germany, or any other country. These arrest warrants are a threat to the U.S. and not only to Israel. We are next in line. Like, well, I want to actually talk about that, the idea that we are next in line. Like, that's true. If the ICC is putting out arrest warrants for Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, then shouldn't they also be pointing the finger at the United States?
Yeah,
because
we obviously are empowering and enabling Israel to commit these war crimes. There's no question about it. But I just don't see that happening. You know, first of all, it was never going to happen while Biden was president, because Biden he's just too much part of the establishment. They're not going to go after. They can decide to throw Netanyahu, overboard. Actually, I think everybody's all these politicians, all these presidents and prime ministers have long hated Netanyahu. So I think that they would be happy to see him go. But Biden is one of them. They would just never let that happen, and I'm sure the court would just never even consider it. Now, it's an interesting question with Trump, because Trump is so hated. You may find people arguing, let's issue, a warrant against Trump if he does something, and he probably will, to make the war his own, to actually empower Israel to do even more damage, and then that may be an excuse. I could actually see that happening because, again, he's not part of the establishment, and the Western establishment, the international rules-based order would very much like to see the back of Trump. They would like to get rid of him, just like they hope to get rid of Netanyahu.
So are you saying that maybe one of the only hopes for Palestine right now is that the hatred of Trump when he gets in power and he continues this war might be enough? People might hate Trump more than they love Israel to that point.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably true, but I don't think it's going to mean the genocide will even be slowed down. I mean, just like getting rid of Netanyahu. First of all, you're not going to get rid of Trump. That it would be a symbolic gesture. It would be important. There's no question about it. Again, I think it would damage the reputation of the U.S. So in the long run, it's going to be damaging to Israel and the Zionist project. But in the short run, it's not going to make any difference. I mean, the bombs are continue to flow to Israel from the U.S. and Israel will continue to ethnically cleanse and the Palestinians.
So did you think that this ICC ruling, these arrest warrants, are very damaging to the United States as well?
Obviously not as damaging as they are to Israel. But anybody who looks at it closely has got to think, and they see it.
Right, and you read these tweets from Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham.
I think that's going to hurt.
Just my God.
See how these other European countries like Germany, and Spain and Ireland, and and even Great Britain, Keir Starmer himself, I think, went and said, we'll honor this warrant if Netanyahu sets foot in the UK. But the U.S.
I think even Canada, I think even Trudeau.
Right. So anyway, the fact.
Not explicitly, but I did see something. He's like, we are a country of laws and we'll follow.
Right. So anyway, it does further isolate the U.S. There's no question. It's doing diplomatic damage, reputational damage to the U.S.
So, do you think there's any way that Netanyahu and Gallant will ever get arrested? They just won't step foot in these certain countries.
They'll make sure ahead of time, that they wherever they go. Again, with in the case of Putin, he's careful. Again, I think that whole warrant is just completely absurd, and that's why I have no respect for the ICC. But I think Kazakhstan was a signatory to the Rome Statute, but they said ahead of time, we're not going to honor this, and so Putin's been there and he's been to other countries, where they've made it clear ahead of time. There was some question, I think he was thinking about going to South Africa a year ago. And it wasn't, the South African government clearly, has very good relations with Russia. But they have, I guess, quite an independent judiciary, which they felt like they couldn't control, and it could create some domestic problems. Like their judiciary could actually have issued a warrant. I don't think that the South Africans would have honored it. I'm sure they wouldn't have, but it would create domestic troubles and conflicts within the country. So, Putin chose not to go there.
So if Netanyahu was arrested, Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, then who's going to run America?
Right, yeah. Yeah, our Middle East policy will be rudderless. Well, we'll just call him up in jail. Right. It's just like a mafia don when he gets arrested. He still runs everything from prison. So I think that's what happened.
Nothing will change. It's crazy. So, okay, it'll damage Israel's reputation, further isolates them, will hopefully give some ammunition to countries to build up the courage to impose sanctions on Israel. So there could be some actual effects.
So
there's okay. And do you think that for the United States, are we adopting this position where we are kind of wanting to go to war against the international rules-based order?
Well, we're not going to go to war.
Starting to tear it down? Or tear it, but I mean, we're further.
Well, it obviously has created tensions within the international rules-based order. Let's put that there. There obviously is a point of disagreement here. Now, again, it is about really. It's more about tactics than strategy. It's about individuals rather than ideologies. Everybody is a Zionist in this international rules-based order, but almost all of them, have, with the exception of the U.S., pretty much has decided that we've got to get rid of Netanyahu here. And I think it suggests you just don't have anybody in Europe actually condemning Zionism and saying, yeah, in fact, this is a genocide and we need to stop it. But people like even Borrell, they're sort of, you can tell, they can't quite, they can't accept that reality, but they're being pushed in that direction, just by the reality. So I think this is a step that could be the beginning of let's say a journey away from Zionism.